Today we're going to do a Dreadnought conversion. That obviously means I'm going to do a few things to the miniature to make it a little different. So these are the parts that I've made up so far. And one of the things I'm planning on doing is, so these are the parts that I made up so far. One of the things I want to do is I want to put some ropes hanging off this shoulder pad, and my intent is to put some feathers on one side, and I want to put a purity seal on the other side, but I wanted to make it look like it's flapping, hence why I'm going to make one up instead of using the ones out the box. Also, these here, which are the shin guards, I want to do a little bit of something different on those, so I'm going to show you what I'm going to do with that. So for the shin guards, what I want to do is I want to use a piece from one of the sprues which is in this box, hence why I'm showing you the box. And the pieces in question are these ones here down the bottom, and they are basically small statues. Now I don't want to use the original piece because I still want to be able to keep the piece for the original miniature, so the original miniature doesn't end up with details missing. But these pieces are just the right size to be able to fit inside those shin guards. Now one of the pieces in question, this one here, I don't think is particularly suitable because as you can see it's got these small hole there, but the other ones shouldn't really be a problem. So first we need some Super Sculpey, and just manipulate it a little bit in your fingers to warm it up. Next I've cut a piece of acetate or a piece of plastic down to size. Then you want to pick the one you want to use. Obviously I'm picking this one because that's where I put the acetate. And then with the Super Sculpey, you just want to press it in, and then you want to try and be careful getting it off again, and it should leave an imprint. Obviously for the point of making the miniature a bit more interesting, I'm going to do the same again. After you've baked the Super Sculpey to the point where it's gone brown, next what you want to do is get some Vaseline, an old brush, and you want to apply the Vaseline and try and make sure you get not just the back here, but try and get into the sides as well. And I would also suggest covering the top, a little bit at the bottom there. As you can see, it's nice and shiny. Once that's done, get your green stuff, and you want to be pushing it in as hard as you can. You can see I've used more green stuff than I need, and in effect I've left this thin here. The reason for this is we're going to leave the green stuff in here while it dries, and then afterwards this gives us something to hold so we can pull it out. Once it's dried and you've separated the two pieces, next you want to clean it under the tap with a toothbrush just to get rid of the Vaseline, and after that you want to clean the excess green stuff off. And it should look like this. Next, I would suggest you probably want to use some tweezers because it is a bit on the small side. Super glue on the back, and then you're ready to put it in place. We've now got a statue. And now we're ready to start doing the rope. So first off, you want to mix some green stuff, and then you want to keep spreading this green stuff out. You can start off initially by rolling it between your hands, but eventually you want to do it with your fingers. And the main thing to do is try and make sure that the thickness of the entire piece ends up being the same thickness all the way from one end to the other. You want to make it as fine as possible, but you want to try and avoid it breaking up if you can. Once you turn your green stuff into a long sausage, next thing, I'm going to use a clamp and a sculpting tool. And what I want to do is I want to attach the sculpting tool into the clamp. Next, throughout the two sides of the green stuff touching each other, you want to find out where the centre is, and the centre wants to go over the tool. I will suggest, if you're doing this, make more than what you think you're going to need, because what you're going to do next is basically you want to continuously wrap the two pieces of green stuff together, so that will make it shrink in size. But also, you're using green stuff, so it's not going to be perfect. It's not as though you're using computer software to do this. So you will find it's potentially one area might be a little bit thicker than another, and therefore you might want to not use that piece and use a piece further down. Once you feel you've got enough rope, you then want to take it off of the sculpting tool it was on. And what I would suggest is bend it if you want it bent, or leave it straight, whichever option you want. Place it in the area where you want it, and if you want it bent, bend it now, because if you leave it straight, it will naturally want to be straight. If you bend it now, then when it's cured, it can stay bent, and it will be quite happy to be that way. The first part of making the purity seals, first off you want to mix some of your green stuff. Spread it out on the surface and try and get it nice and thin like these are. Then you want to put it on some foil, but you don't want crinkly foil like this. The flatter the flatter the foil is, the better. And the reason for this is otherwise the crinkly foil underneath will end up on your green stuff. Next, I've applied a small amount of water onto my sculpting tool, because I want to give a little bit of pressure to encourage the green stuff, hopefully, to stick to the foil. But not the tool. Now what we want to do to try and make it look like it's flapping is we can use the foil to bend it, manipulate it slightly. But we're trying to avoid putting our fingers on it, because obviously the fingers will leave fingerprints, which we don't want. Now we just need to leave them, give them time to dry. Next, it's time to glue the rope in place. As it's a bit fiddly, I'm using tweezers just to make it a bit easier. I would also suggest that you only glue one side in at a time. Next, I'm planning on having a purity seal on this side, so I want to take a little bit off the top of this. And now we can start gluing these pieces in. I've rolled up a piece of Super Scorpion, which we were using earlier, and I want to cut the end off to make it flat. Also, I'll point out that the thickness of this is the same as the piece of the parchment. And what we're going to do is get one of these containers, which are for medication, and trim a piece off. It's a bit hard to see, but I've used this piece of plastic which came off the pill packet to put a DA on the inside of this. This now needs to be baked, and then we'll get to the next stage. Next, what we want to do is make the wax part of the purity seal. So first we want a ball of green stuff approximately the same size as our tube. And we want to place that on the front there. Remember, because of these various parts we've built up there, we've got various gradients here. So we're going to want to push the wax into that area. Use a little bit of water on a sculpting tool just to flatten it out slightly, and this will help to get rid of any fingerprints as well. And we just want to push it into these areas just to make sure that there's no big areas there showing the where the rope is, or where the rope or where the parchment parts would be. Once you feel you've got this in place, that little tube we made, next we want to dip it in some water first so it doesn't stick, and be careful looking at the symbol we painted on the inside of it, and then we just want to push this into the middle and it'll leave an imprint. Obviously I'm doing this for Dark Angels, so I've tried to put a DA inside. However, you could do whatever you want, different initials, maybe something different like a paw print, for example, if it was Space Walls. There's all sorts of different things you could do. I admit the D didn't come out quite as well as I would have liked. However, you can see how the concept works. Next, we want to work on this feather here. Initially cut it into shape, and then with your modelling knife, just create a series of lines from the centre and just draw the lines outwards. From a second feather, I've basically started the same as I did with the first one, only I've done it on a piece of foil. The reason why I've done it on a piece of foil is I want to bend the shape of the feather to add a bit more character. So once you've done it, you want to try and bend it while the green stuff hasn't had time to set, and that way when it does set, it will set into the shape you want. And you just have to be careful to try and bend it round and give it time to glue. And give it time to set, and then you can do the next part. Now the green stuff's had time to set, it's time to peel the foil off. Next, you might want to clean up the shape of the feather. For example, on this one I need to get rid of this little piece here, and I want to shape this end. Next, we want to apply some green stuff on the opposite side, and then we want to put the lines in for the feathers again. Same as before, we want to use water so we can spread the green stuff, and that way it will move willingly. And as before, we use the knife to put in the lines. Next, now we've got the lines on the opposite side, and while the green stuff still hasn't cured, we can push it into place. And now, with another small piece of green stuff, placed it on the end to give that last piece of the feather. You're going to want to leave this now to dry, just in case. Then you might maybe want to tidy it up just a little bit, but once it's painted, those feathers should look quite good. Next, now we've got the lines on the opposite side, and while the green stuff still hasn't cured, we can push it into place. And now, with another small piece of green stuff, placed it on the end to give that last piece of the feather. You're going to want to leave this now to dry, just in case. Then you might maybe want to tidy it up just a little bit, but once it's painted, those feathers should look quite good.